The famous S1 leads through both Central and South Vietnam, one of the most fascinating countries in Southeast Asia. The starting point of this journey is the dreamy small town of Hoi An on the South China Sea. Hoi An has always been associated with trade. In the 16th century, both Chinese and Japanese settlers established a trading base along a strategically important road. Since then, fishermen have replaced the former merchants, and their daily catch now dominates daily life in the old harbour. Time seems to stand still in historic Hoi An. Unlike those buildings constructed by the Japanese, several that date back to the time when the Chinese prospered here have survived to the present day. The former cultural influence of the Chinese is reflected in various assembly halls, houses and temples. The assembly halls that were divided up in order to represent 5 autonomous clans still testify to the great power that the Chinese merchants once had in Hoi An. The rickshaw is a good way to get around and see at close hand many of the sights and some of the traditional workshops in various parts of the town. To many who come here for the first time, the techniques used by this family of potters may seem to be a little outdated today. However, it is this atmosphere of bygone times that is the true charm of Hoi An. Compared to these simple workshops, the town's Chinese temples highlight its former prosperity. But Hoi An's most visited building is a covered bridge that is not of Chinese origin, but was the brainchild of numerous Japanese merchants. Due to its magnificent decor and valuable furnishings, the 2-story Peng Hung House is one of the most beautiful buildings in Hoi An. The presence of Japanese merchants came to an abrupt end in the 17th century, when the Japanese emperor forbade his people to have any contact with foreigners. In the 19th century, Hoi An lost its importance. The increasing silting up of the Tupon River made it impossible for new and larger ships to reach the harbour. The journey continues by car higher up into the mountains, past dense forests that in part owe their rapid growth to frequent rainfall. The strategic importance of this mountain pass has been recognized for a long time, as indicated by an old fortification that now lies in ruins alongside the road that leads to Danang. From the most elevated point, the downward journey travels past the marble mountains of Ngu Han San, limestone hills that contain a large amount of marble. Marble contained in the valley below the hills is worked by numerous sculptors. Their splendid creations making a popular souvenir. Each of these marble-rich hills is dedicated to one of 5 traditional elements. Due to its various pagodas, Chi Son Hill is culturally the most interesting. The 5 hills south of Danang symbolize the 5 elements of Chinese cosmology, which consist of wood, metal, earth, fire, and water. The Tam Tai Pagoda, the Hill of Water of Tai Son, testifies to the beautiful architecture that dates back to the time of Emperor Min Mang. The pagoda dates back to 1825 and was built on historic ground. It replaced a building that was constructed here during the reign of King Lê Tan Tong. In the past, both Hindu as well as Buddhist deities were worshipped here. Today, the pagoda is mostly dedicated to the gods of Cham. The Cham are regarded as direct descendants of the old, formerly significant kingdom of Champa that developed as early as the 2nd and 3rd centuries AD and spread through the central as well as the southern part of today's Vietnam. The Marble Mountains are located only a few kilometers from Danang, a city that in recent years has become an increasingly popular tourist destination. At first glance, the city seems to be highly industrial. One of the few cultural attractions in Danang is the Cham Museum that was inaugurated in 1916 and was subsequently enlarged. It now contains many fascinating examples of Cham sculpture. Danang was once situated in the center of the Champa Kingdom and thus contains the largest collection of Cham art in the world. There are around 300 sculptures and works of art in the museum that date from between the 7th and 15th centuries. The popularity of the town developed only quite recently. During the Vietnam War, the largest American military base was located here. Since then, the former Air Force base has not been used for military purposes as it has been transformed into Da Nang's international airport. The Johan Market is a feast for the senses. It is here that freshly caught seafood is destined for the city's finest hotels. Various market stalls provide visitors with an insight into the everyday life of the 4th largest city in Vietnam, and one that underwent considerable change during the war. Many of the tourists who come here are attracted by the nearby sandy beaches that are among the most beautiful in Southeast Asia. The harbour dates back to the late 15th century, when the strategic advantage of the horseshoe-shaped bay at the mouth of the Han River was duly exploited. In the 19th century, Da Nang quickly evolved to become the most important harbour and financial metropolis in central Vietnam, and thus replaced Hoi An as the country's main city. The The year 1858 marked the beginning of the fast-approaching colonisation when French warships attacked Danang's bay and natural harbour. In the years that followed, France continued to extend its power into Indochina. They also renamed the former Danang into the French Turan. The journey from the large harbour to Danang's train station travels through the centre of this modern city that has a population of around 800,000. Here we take the Vietnam S1 train, one of the fastest routes to the south. Even though it is often overcrowded, for many it is the only means of transport. The red colour of the train is not coincidental. Since 1976, Vietnam has been a socialist republic. The Vietnam S1 train travels from the capital of Hanoi deep into the south of the country. The countryside is just a few kilometers outside Danang. Agriculture is the most important industry in Vietnam. It employs about 60% of the population. In recent years, Vietnam has enjoyed a significant return in its fortunes, and this has attracted an increasing number of foreign investors. However, the rural regions have not thus far benefited from this. The train passes several small, idyllic villages and picturesque landscapes. Even though the S1 is one of the fastest trains in Vietnam, it makes several stops in various towns and villages, such as here at Ga Tam Ki Station. For foreign visitors, the journey on the Vietnamese railroad is one of the most impressive and fascinating ways to discover this colourful country. Again, endless paddy fields. Today, Vietnam is the world's second largest exporter of both rice and coffee. Our next stop is the small station of Cam. Almost the entire section of the S1 Vietnam railway line between Da Nang and the southern city of Nha Trang is dominated by vast fields of rice. The scenery features several wonderful mountains. The landscape is often so spectacular that it's quite overwhelming. On its journey south, the S1 also crosses many rivers, such as the Song Darang, that flows into the South China Sea close to the town of Thi Hoa. Train stops in yet another small and lively town, until the driver sets the train in motion once again. The many cultural and scenic impressions of this journey through Vietnam are a truly memorable experience. While the Vietnam S1 travels to the former city of Saigon that has now been renamed Ho Chi Minh City, the railway station at Nha Trang marks the conclusion of our journey by train. The beautiful location of this coastal city was much appreciated by the French, who, in colonial times, transformed it into a second Nice. Most of the city's new hotels are located close to a 5-kilometre-long sandy beach, from where it's only a short journey to the older part of Nha Trang. Unlike the more modern areas of the city, the old fishing harbour on the estuary of the Kai River has retained its old-world atmosphere. Several boats, a pretty bridge, and the surrounding mountains give this part of the city a special kind of charm. On the opposite riverbank of the Kai is the sanctuary of Po Nagar, that is dedicated to the main goddess of the Cham. It is believed that as early as the 2nd century AD, a wooden temple was located here. Of the 2 main towers of the present building, the 23-metre-high northern tower is remarkably well preserved. Following the destruction of the first timber-built Cham sanctuary in the 8th century, it was decided that its replacement would be constructed of bricks and mortar. Even today, many people worship at the cult site of Po Nagar, just outside the city. The faithful make devotions to the goddess. Southwest of the major sanctuary of the Cham, there is a 14-metre-high, snow-white Buddhist statue. It was built as part of the Chua Long Son monastery that was established here in 1963. The journey continues from the coast to Phan Rang, and from there, in a westerly direction, deeper into the interior of the country and to one of the most fascinating temple sites of the Cham. The 110-kilometre-long Mountain Pass Road leads up to the southern highlands of Vietnam and past several smaller cities. Proudly and highly visible, the 4 brick towers of the Cham sanctuary of Po Klung Garai rise up from a 100-metre-high hill. From here, there's a magnificent panoramic view of the surrounding scenery, as well as the numerous buildings of this significant temple site. This important temple is dedicated to King Po Klung Garai. Architecturally, the site is arranged in classic form. The sanctuary was most likely built between the 13th and 14th centuries during the reign of King Simavarman III. The interior of the temple's large tower is decorated with an extraordinary image, a phallus-like symbol that originated in India, the Muchalingam. For the Cham, this type of image embodies a common form of devotion for King Po Klung Garai. The site is still worshipped by the Cham, of whom only a small minority remain. The road along the mountain pass often contains farmers. The curved road leads further uphill and past jungle-like forests that during the Vietnam War suffered considerable damage due to heavy bombing and the use of Agent Orange. But in this part of the country, nature has fully recovered from the destruction of war. From the road, there are fine views of the surrounding mountains. At one time, there was a train service between Phan Rang and the city of Dalat that is 1,475 meters above sea level. Today, this road is the only connection between the two cities. Now we have reached the final destination of our journey. Dalat, the capital of the province of Lam Dong, is known as the City of Eternal Spring and is a popular holiday resort. It also contains the summer residence of the last emperor of Vietnam. Surrounded by wonderful parks, the summer palace of Emperor Bao Dai is one of the city's most beautiful attractions and was heavily influenced by the French. This, the villa of the last monarch of Vietnam, dates back to the 1930s and highlights the artistic influence of Art Deco design. The area around Dalat was first discovered in 1897 by the French explorer Alexandre Yersin, who thought that it would make an ideal spa resort. French colonialists had searched long and hard for such a mild location, as they were not suited to the hot climate of the lowlands. The interior of the summer palace is also well worth a visit. The first impression of the building's exterior is also confirmed within the palace. The wealth of Vietnam's last emperor is still plain to see. Today, the imperial residence contains a museum and several items that belong to Bao Dai, who once reigned South Vietnam. The imperial residences of Dalat and Nha Trang are a unique and fascinating testament to Vietnam's late colonial period. Bao Dai passed away in 1997 while exiled in Paris. Since it was first discovered by the French, Dalat has been totally transformed. It now has a population of around 130,000. Dalat also has a first-class tourist infrastructure. The city's popularity, with both foreign visitors and the Vietnamese themselves, is due to its wonderfully romantic atmosphere. Dalat is particularly popular as a honeymoon destination. Indeed, both the Valley of Love and Lake of Sorrow well deserve their names. Here, there's no shortage of romantic attractions. Around the idyllic Lake of Sorrow, there are several beautiful swan boats. The lake's name refers to a tragic love story in which a young couple drowned as they were not allowed to marry. In spite of the large crowds of tourists who come here, there are still a few tranquil corners for those who are romantically inclined. Now it's surely only a question of time before the Vietnam S1 train and this fascinating region of Vietnam become an integral part of the mainstream tourist map of Southeast Asia.